Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome to Satsang, everyone. Happy to see you all. So, who would like to start today?
Because it seems that there are very strong movements happening in our consciousness at the moment, and especially with this virus. I just feel how a lot of fear is being created, depending what one is, and there's also a lot of division, and at times even hatred being felt. So I can also feel it also even in the body, that something is just becoming very intense, and even within families there's a lot of conflict about all this vaccination, not vaccination, and it's not even a political topic I wanted to raise, but more maybe just a question how to face this movement, and if there's anything which can be done in some way. I mean, nothing can be done, that's clear, but it's just a deep longing for peace and harmony. But on the outside, it seems just to express itself in a very strong way. And so the only way, I guess, what we can do is just to remain present and not to judge. But sometimes actions seem to be needed. So maybe you can just say something on this. What would be your guidance? What can be done in these days?
Yes, thank you for this pointing. We've all been now in this circumstance, this intensifying circumstance now for 2 years. So this is, first of all, let me say, this is beginning to wear on many people. So you aren't alone in this. However, a large part of our effort, you can say, as sadhaks, as practitioners, is to find what you indicate, this internal presence and peace and calmness. And you also point out that this peace, this love, this compassion, we find inside. And it's only when we get drawn into the apparent drama around us and in the world that we lose the direct perception of this peace and calm. But I want to once again point out to you or maybe ask you, are there two of you? No. Is there one which is peaceful and calm, and one which is dancing in the world, shall we say? No, this is the same one. So first of all, recognize that everything is rising in consciousness. Reality, which is what you are, is always here as being, consciousness, and bliss. Everything else is dancing in the field of change. So don't cling to what is changing. What is changing is coming and going. When I say don't cling to what is changing, what's indicated is to remain witnessing through compassion with love everything that is rising, staying for a moment and falling. All people, all experiences, all thoughts. You are the entirety of everything you see, so whatever rises can be held in the compassion, in the peace of your open heart. So what to do, you ask? What can be done? Because we are dancing, are we not? Yes, we are dancing. Always, it seems, sometimes. What we can do to our great benefit and to the benefit of those around us is to keep the heart open. If the heart is open, whatever dance you are required to do, just do it. Don't be afraid. Acknowledging that fear is here is to be awake. To be afraid is to believe that the fear is real. So if you know fear is here, then you have some clarity. Because in this moment, you can also see that if I am looking at this fear, if I am aware of this fear, if there is a witnessing of fear going on, I cannot be the fear. I am this. I am that which is aware. The fear is an object. It's a challenging object. Circumstances may be difficult in the world around you. But as soon as you recognize the truth of any situation that you're in, you are free of it. So just keep your heart open. Your task as a sadhak is to remember, to see, to experience. I am the self. All of this, which is coming and going, is rising in the heart of being. I am that. You see, everything that you are perceiving is here to show you something about yourself. And often that something is the edge, you can say, the edge of your practice. So when you find yourself in difficult, challenging situations, what you are seeing is the edge of that place where you tend to close down the heart. So in almost every circumstance, outward appearing circumstance, challenges in the mind, challenges in the heart, the practice is always to recognize this tension, if you will, between the desire to close down, to separate, to judge, and your willingness to open in the full embrace of all that is. Knowing that as you push, as you open, as you allow in your life, this inner peace and calm can flower beyond what you thought was possible. So the secret is to keep opening, to recognize these tendencies in the mind, to shut down, to close, to separate. And through this noticing, to realize if I can see this, I cannot be that. Return to this witnessing, knowing self. This is the gateway to opening again.
There's a tendency to, you just mentioned fear, but if the pain is felt, the first reaction is wanting to shut it down. But just as you speak it out, I can see that you have to embrace even the pain, whatever is coming, just to fully open the heart to it. and only
Yes.
this way it can actually pass.
Yes. And perhaps, Atmavidya, in this circumstance, the better way to frame it is to allow it rather than embrace it. Because the mind has this tendency to think that I must embrace this, I must receive this in some way, I must do something about this. This is where all of that comes from. This is why the instruction is not push things away. The instruction is don't cling. Because this implies more of an allowing. So what is here is here. When we don't identify with something that is here, and we don't say this is me or this pain is mine, we acknowledge it, this pain is here, but we don't say this pain is mine, then we are allowing what is here to be here. And there's a greater possibility that we won't suffer mentally and emotionally over whatever pain we are feeling, whether it's a physical pain or an emotional pain. It is always identification which redoubles the pain. We are afraid of something. We don't like something. We're in judgment of something or someone. But by allowing this to be here and remaining as that which is aware and acknowledging, because I can see this, this is not me. I am that which is aware of this pain, of this difficulty. This allows us to stand in the moment, present, witnessing to the best of our ability that which is passing by. This always becomes our refuge in this practice of inquiry. So I would like to point out to all of you that the way in which the mind frames what it is looking at is an important part of this cultivation of understanding and discrimination. Sometimes the best thing we can do for ourselves is to look directly at the way the mind is framing something and simply to say, oh, that might be a little bit inaccurate. So rather than saying, I should embrace this, or I am embracing this, and somehow making it mine, I say instead, I am allowing what is here to be here. This is a very, very different approach. So if we look at the way in which sometimes, not always, because, this can drive us crazy sometimes, but if we do take the time sometimes to look at the way the mind has framed a particular situation or that we find ourselves in, or a particular thought pattern, we look at the way that is framed in the mind, we can see very directly the conditioning of the mind, just in the way that the mind frames the perception that we're having. And all it takes in many cases is a slight reframing, and we release the tension that is around that conditioning. So just something to consider in your practice.
Rishi.
Hello, John.
Yeah. Is this Atma that spoke before?
Yes, this was Atmavidya, yes.
So one of the things that arose for me in her comment is that these tensions between humans often wish to be resolved in a verbal manner. And verbal engagement is often draws my attention into the drama or the moment. And that which you described earlier, where one part of you is still and one part of you is dancing. Yes, there is not two of me here, and yet when I move into a verbal dialogue, it's very distracting from awareness, especially when there's tension or aggression there. So maybe I'm just doubling down on the same question, I guess, but if you could try that on me again, it might be helpful. Thank you.
Well, JB, it's in the heat of the moment, which seems like is kind of what you're describing here, where you're in a direct engagement with someone. You may have to, in that moment, just dance in whatever way it comes about. But in order to just dance, there can't be an expectation in the mind about the outcome of the dance. There's just dancing. So I would ask you again, who is it that's dancing? Or who is it that's engaged in some way with this experience? Who is it that has an expectation that the dance will end well? The root of identification is this sense of meanness. This identification, this sense of meanness, doesn't allow us to dance freely with whatever's here. And then, when that experience passes, for there to be no residual. Because if there is no one here, if there is no identification, then whatever is happening simply happens. And at the moment that it ends, there is no residual. Typically, through our conditioning, we identify with what happened. And then minutes, hours, days, or weeks later, it's still going through this mind. This is the sign of identification. There is someone here who is reliving it, who is living it, who is rehashing it. All of this is the reinforcement of the conditioning which led to the situation in the first place. As soon as identification is broken, then it becomes possible to dance freely in every circumstance, knowing that this is simply the will of the divine that's working out here. It's very simple for us to understand the will of the divine when we feel bliss, joy, happiness, positive outcome. It's very difficult, though, isn't it? To see the will of the divine in operation when the circumstances are challenging, when we don't understand what is happening, when we don't have a clear insight into why something is taking place. But this is the moment in which, if we remember, though I don't understand it, this is the will of the Supreme that is working out here. Then we can back off the identification somewhat. We can allow the circumstance to be what it is. We can play our part in it. And we can let go of it through not clinging when it wants to pass. You see, one of the clear points of understanding in the inquiry is that there is no me to whom any of this is happening. In fact, in the final analysis, nothing is ever happening. Life is simply here, as it is, flowing in its own way. When it's truly flowing, we flow with it. When it stops, there is no residual. We carry nothing forward in our own minds. Each and every one of you has within your own being the cave of the heart. You don't need to go to a cave on a mountain. You can if you have that opportunity, but you don't need to. Even the cave on the mountain is just an outward reflection of the cave of the heart. Regardless of the circumstances, the experiences you are having or have just had, return to the cave of the heart. This place of silent being and knowing. Find your rest there. I hope that you all can remember that every moment in which you can remember and know clearly, I am the self. All of this this difficult and challenging world we sometimes find ourselves in is only that one self. When you are able to carry this in your heart, to have this remembrance, you bless the whole world. The world is all full of beings who will say the world is this, the world is that. I don't like this, I don't like that. This is terrible, that is terrible. The one who remembers all of this is the divine. All of this is the Supreme Self. Blesses the world with this knowing. So always try to remember that if you want to change the world, bless it. Know all of this, which I am witness to, is only the Supreme. Fill your heart and your being with this recognition. Leave everything else to the Supreme. All right, my friends, thank you all for being here, especially those of you who are in places where it's very late and you're up past your bedtime. Wish you all the best. Om Jayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Purvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityor Mukshiyam Amritava Swaha Bhuva Bhu Om Sat Jung Hum Om. I hope to see you all again soon. Namaste.